Senator Hatchett, do you mind opening us up, please, sir?
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here today. We thank you for putting us in this position, waking us up this morning. We pray for our districts back home, be with our families, and be with us here as we continue to do your will. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Senator. We have 4 bills today. I think we have about 5 on Wednesday, and then next Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday will be the last day to get things through the to get things through so that we can get them to Senate rules. I think I said that sort of halfway right. All right, so I appreciate that. We have the Speaker Pro Tem with us, so we're going to move her HB 370 up to the top of the agenda, and if you wouldn't mind just taking the podium there, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you House Bill 370, which pertains only to the Grady Memorial, the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority. It doesn't apply to any other hospital authorities. I just wanted to make that clear. And if you can indulge me, I'll just give you a little history. In '08, when Grady Memorial Hospital was under extreme financial pressure to maintain solvency, the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority's role of running Grady was reduced to just oversight and hospital facility landlord. And the Grady Hospital Corporation was formed to run the hospital, and that's who does the management operations. Currently, Grady Hospital pays the authority $3 million a year in lease payments. And the authority in law is not supposed to engage in duplicative activities with the corporation. In current law, they're supposed to take most of those monies, except for what few dollars it would take for oversight, give it back to Grady Hospital so that they can use it to fulfill pension obligations and indigent care. And so what the legislation does is it further clarifies those current restrictions in law on how it can spend the $3 million in lease payments, and it would expressly clarify that they're not to make duplicative activities, because for every dollar that the authority doesn't send to the corporation, Grady has to make up the difference. And they estimate it'll result in about $1.2 million more going back to Grady Hospital for indigent care and pension obligations. The bill was requested by current and past authority and corporate board members. It will not, it does have, puts in place term limits that are similar to the Grady Hospital Memorial Corporation's term limits, and it will not result in any current board member having to go off the board immediately until the end of their term. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does the committee have any questions at all? Senator Kirkpatrick.
So, thank you, Madam Pro Tem. I just was going to clarify, from my understanding, the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority and the Grady Hospital Authority or board are in favor of this, right?
So there are members on each board that have asked for this.
Yeah.
They've not taken an official position on it. I've had some of the county commission members, Democrat and Republican, both ask for it as well. And that's why I made sure we had bipartisan support in the House.
All right, thank you so much. I do see that you had Schofield and Oliver as second and third signers. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Senator Calzert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is Grady the only hospital in the state with more than 900 beds?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And that was there was a bill back in 2013 that, to be honest with you, I'd forgotten that I carried, and we came up with that definition, and it's still the case.
Is there any reason you wouldn't want this to apply to smaller hospitals as well?
Well, I had someone ask me that earlier, and I'd be happy to work on that bill with you next year if needed. I did not want to get into the business of all the other hospital authorities on something that was more of a local issue here, but I couldn't find a repository for all the information. I think there's about 60 hospital authorities. There are some that have term limits, but I couldn't find a list of all of them that did. I believe the Athens Clark County Hospital Authority has term limits.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other, Minority Leader Butler, number 5?
Number 5, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I basically was going to ask a question, same as the chairman, if there were any other hospitals in Georgia that have term limits.
There are. I just don't know how many there are. We found a couple when we were I asked the hospital, one of the hospital associations, and that's who told me that we didn't have a listing of all of them. But the Grady Memorial Hospital Corporation that actually now runs the Grady Hospital does have 3 3-year term limits.
Well, I'm still not understanding why Grady is targeted. That explanation you gave is,
Well, it's
Didn't
a
seem
unique
like the
hospital.
reason.
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
It's a unique hospital. There's no other hospital authority authority or corporation that has that kind of a budget and staff. And back when they replaced the authority's responsibilities with the corporation, it was fully expected that the $3 million in lease payments would mostly go back to Grady for operations. But in fact, what's happened is their expenditures on activities other than pension obligations and indigent care have increased every single year since 2008. And it's just a problem. I mean, the authority was a problem before. There have continued to be some friction, and I didn't want to try to solve the rest of the state's problems on this, but Grady is so integral to the metro Atlanta area that if I can do something to result in over $1 million going back to Grady Hospital, I think that's a good thing.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to pass on LC 338521.
Do I hear a second? Second, Chairman Huffstetler. And let's do certainly further discussion, Minority Leader.
Did anyone else sign up to?
Nobody signed up to speak, I just checked.
I had someone in my office that wanted to speak to what, but they had another
I mean, listen, if there's
appointment.
somebody out there that would like to speak, they can certainly come through the door. But we did have sign-up sheets for all these bills, and only 316 is the only one that had anybody sign up.
Okay.
And we'll give them another 5 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that 5 seconds.
They can always talk about it in rules if there is an issue. So let's do a hand count on this one. Let's call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand in favor. All those opposed. So just one opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Madam Speaker, do you have someone to carry this already? Have you picked someone? Senator Kirkpatrick, that's right. I think I remember you telling me that already. Okay, thank you so much. All righty, so I'm going to go down on the list. So I apologize to my colleague from my delegation. So his name is at the bottom of the list, but so we got Chair Lady Cooper, Dominic Laricchia, and Representative Stevens. I will go with that order unless y'all want to go separately or differently. Okay, I'll leave it up to y'all. Come on, Chair Lady. House Bill 567, Newborn Screening Genetics Advisory Committee. The podium is yours.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee for your vote for Grady. I was very involved with the switchover, and my husband went to medical school in Emory and did a lot of his work at Grady, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for Grady, and anytime Grady gets an extra $1 million, $2 or $3 million, it is really important. It seems like a drop in the bucket, but it's not at Grady. So thank you. Thank you to the committee. I bring to you a committee substitute to House Bill 567. It's LC 338712S. Okay. This is on the newborn screening. I think currently newborns in Georgia are screened for about 36 different genetic diseases. By this screening, we evaluate that we help about 400 children in Georgia each year in preventing either their death or improving their chances of not living with as severe of disabilities when possible. The federal government has the Federal Recommending Uniform Screening Panel, and their job is to study all of the new genetic diseases that are coming out, and when there is something we can do about them, to recommend to the states that they add them to their state newborn screening panel. We have a committee, the Newborn Screening Advisory Committee here in Georgia. It's more by rule. It is not in law. And they're a little slow on making recommendations to us. They had some that were recommended by the feds in 2015 and 2013, and so far we have heard nothing about those new illnesses being put on our newborn screening panel. So what this does, it codifies into law that committee. It tells them that they have a year from the time they get the recommendations from the feds to have looked at this and made a recommendation to the Commissioner of Public Health. When they make a recommendation, the Commissioner of Public Health is then directed to go to the legislative OPD and our legislative committee on budget, and to have that as a recommendation when it comes back to decide whether that should be a recommendation for us in our next year, that it should be funded. And this will cut, and that if they pass and we have the budget for them, that they be added to the screening panel within 18 months. So we're trying to make this a more efficient, directed, people are given jobs to do so that we can get on the panel the new tests that are really important to saving lives of Georgian children, babies.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Does anybody have any questions on this bill? We did not have anybody to sign up. There is a handout with this rare diseases. You'll see the handout there. National Economic Burden of Rare Disease Study Foundation. Senator Walker.
I make a recommendation to pass.
Thank you, Senator Walker. Now is the appropriate time, and second from Senator Burke. And yes, okay, so we are on LC 338762S. So this is the do pass by committee substitute. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. So passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have somebody to carry it yet, unless somebody has been asked by, but, Mr. Chairman, okay, they've talked to you, Dr. Burke.
Chairman Burke is volunteering.
But you'd like to continue, well, I think it would be very appropriate, since you were a practicing OBGYN, if you would like to carry it.
He's the man. Certainly, certainly.
Thank you. And, you know, I've been working for the last several years getting funding for CRAB-A to be added. And, you know, the committee did meet over the summer, and I want to publicly thank them for their work on that. And they did make a recommendation, and we're working hard to try to see if we can get that in the current 22 budget. I don't see anything in this language that interferes with that work we've done.
No, sir.
But I will be looking at it a little more carefully, just to be sure there's nothing that would give us a bump. And if there is something, we'll work together to make sure we clear that up.
That we correct
But
it, sure.
I know you don't want to stand in the way of that process going forward, because
No,
that's
sir.
exactly what this is for, is to
Right, to
move
promote
these things
that.
along. So Thank you for your work on
And
this.
are
I
you willing to
appreciate
carry it, sir?
it. Be glad to.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate the
And we'll
committee.
see you tomorrow.
See you then, sir.
Okay. So we got two left, Stevens or Laricchia? Okay, all righty. So age has its benefits, right?
It does, Mr. Chairman. The gray hair wins.
Okay.
I bring to you today House Bill 316. It may be the easiest one that you'll deal with today. All that it does is, as a result of COVID the past year, the workload in pharmacies have changed quite a bit. The current ratio in code is 3 technicians to 1 pharmacist, and we're moving this to 4 technicians to 1 pharmacist. There's currently 1 that has to be certified. This will just say that 2 have to be certified.
We appreciate that. That's pretty straightforward. Does the committee have any questions at all? And we did have somebody to sign up, so if they want to be making their way through the door, and we'll have a question from Chair Lady Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Stevens, for bringing this. I just wanted to ask you, the bill refers to direct supervision, right? So they're
Yes.
in the same physical location?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
And all of our technicians throughout the state are registered, but the ones that take the class, the ones that take the test, and the ones that take the continuing education are certified. But all of them are direct supervision,
Thank you.
line of sight.
Thomas Busey, did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Is he had signed up in favor of this? He's the executive director of Georgia Retailers as he is stepping through the door. Okay, we certainly appreciate your brevity. Thank you so much. And if there are no further questions, we'll entertain a motion. Anybody? Senator Kirkpatrick?
Do pass, let me find the bill, though.
Yeah, LC 338558.
Yeah,
It's House Bill 316. Do I have a second? Second, Senator Burke beat you to it, Senator Al. But all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Representative Chairman Stevens, did you have anybody?
Yes, sir.
All right, he's pointing to his colleague from Chatham County and Bryan County, so which we represent together. Thank you, be happy to. Me. All right, so last but not least, we could put more bills on if I known we were going to be so efficient today. I'm just taking the Chairman Burke's lead as insurance was so efficient. The healthcare team is working together. All right, Representative, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. If you don't mind, I'd kind of like to piggyback off of what Madam Chair Cooper was saying about these newborn screening. The JERMS Act deals with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which is one of the newborn screens, and we're learning so much about this particular rare disease that we are just now beginning to look at some policies that will help within states. And so I thought that was interesting that she presented that bill and that oversight committee that she's referring to and what they report back to us on these rare diseases. But the JERMS Act is special to me because I've been working on this for about 4 years with one of my lifelong friends. Chris and Amber Waldron have a son named Jerem that has congenital adrenal hyperplasia, the salt wasting form of CAH. And for those of you that don't know, it is one of the rare diseases. Only 1 in about 20,000 children are born with CAH. And that adrenal insufficiency causes a problem with the way that their bodies deal with stress. If they get a virus, they can literally go into adrenal crisis. If they're injured in a car accident or if a baseball hits them in the nose and a severe nosebleed or a broken nose, their body begins to go through that adrenal crisis and they can go into shock and literally die. Now, that's not the case in always, but that is a potential risk for these individuals that have CAH. And so what they have to do is they have a medic alert bracelet, they have a sticker on their automobile, and they have this little care bag that they keep with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When they're spending the night with grandma, they have to have this bag that has the Solu-Cortef in it. And what this bill simply does is allow EMS paramedics to be able to administer a shot of the Solu-Cortef. In this bill, it refers to it as hydrocortisone sodium succinate, but that Solu-Cortef is that. And it will allow the paramedic to administer a shot if these things are true. That they have congenital adrenal hyperplasia, that they are in adrenal crisis, and that they have the medication on his or her person or belongings of hydrocortisone sodium succinate that's in the package that clearly states the dosage and the expiration date. The way that this came about is this young man, Jerem, was in Nevada when he was an infant with his family and went into adrenal crisis. They called the ambulance got there, they loaded Jerem up in the ambulance, and they had the medication on them, but the paramedic on the ambulance would not administer the shot because under state law they could not. So what states have done, Nevada, Kentucky, Kansas, different states have passed a similar measure that would allow paramedics to administer shots for rare diseases if that was identifiable, that they had CAH, that they were in crisis, and that medication, the expiration date was good and had the dosage. And so that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. I tried to be thorough, but as brief as possible, because this is a nationally listed rare disease under the National Organization of Rare Diseases and Congenital Adrenal Research, Education, and Support. And so it's kind of hard to summarize that in just a few minutes.
So my only, the question I had really was, I mean, we're doing one diagnosis that we can give steroids to. I mean, there are other diagnoses like, and we were just looking it up here, Addison's disease, what famous person had Addison's disease? JFK, all right. And how many people on this panel have given Solu-Cortef or steroids somewhere in their life? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I thought that Senator Walker, you raising your hand too? Not quite. All right, Dolezal. That's sort of my only issue. Is that do we need to come back next year, or is it because the CAH is not the only one that requires that? It really didn't occur to me until I looked up JFK and that he had Addison's and not. So Addison's is congenital adrenal hypoplasia, if I remember correctly. And is the same situation in that they take a steroid like prednisone, 17 milligrams a day or something like that, but when they have a car accident or they get shot, then they would get a shot of steroids there initially.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Were you finished?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I think what's unique about this is that because this adrenal crisis can potentially be immediately fatal, where administering that needs to be done immediately. And so I'm not sure if that is the same with Addison's disease, but I do know under adrenal crisis with CAH that it can be deadly within 1 hour.
So, this is we can look at that as a genetic disorder,
Yes, sir.
And that's what's needed, but it is something that maybe the medical community could research for us. Maybe we could get Emory or MCG or Mercer or somebody on top of that and see if we need to add that
Yes, sir.
in the future. But let's go with this as it is, and this was a substitute. Can you just tell us what was different about the substitute? Or
Yes, sir. It was just brought to our attention with some concerns about, we had originally put in more first responders, and if you'll see the LC33 on there, you'll see we got one of the best in the business helping us write this. But they had included other first responders, and they decided to just go with paramedics. And most of the EMS services have paramedics on their ambulances instead of getting into all of the training and.
The other aspects of that?
Yes, sir.
I understand, I appreciate that. Any questions, Senator Al?
About sermon number 3, line 23, where you list the conditions under which the paramedic can administer the Cellular-Cortef. It says, is in adrenal crisis. Given the risks that you've described of having an Addisonian crisis or CAH, crisis, and not giving the Cellular-Cortef versus the fear of inadvertently diagnosing something as a crisis and not giving it, do you think it's worth saying has a high suspicion of or has a reasonable presumption of being in adrenal crisis? Because I wonder that people were like, well, I'm not sure, like, could it be, couldn't it be, and they won't give it? Because my understanding is that the side effects of giving it, even if it's the wrong diagnosis, is
So in other
low.
words, what's the downside of giving
Yeah,
it? There's
right.
not much.
No, zero downside, maybe just a little bit of it's a
Right,
shock of
gotcha.
that'll give you a little bit of a headache,
I mean,
but
it's steroids, so do
I-
you think it's worth broadening that language to be under
I
reasonable
agree.
presumption of,
I agree with
so
that.
that people aren't like, well, I'm not sure, and they don't give it.
Ms.
Right.
Howerton, is there something that could make that language a little bit looser?
I guess on line 23, you say is believed to be an adrenal crisis?
Is believed to be an adrenal crisis?
Suspected?
Would the author be receptive to that?
Absolutely, that makes perfectly good sense, perfectly.
Is believed, so line 23 is, just after the word is, believed to be, would be the amendment, and this would be the Senator Al amendment, and believed to be an adrenal crisis. And if we've got a second on that, all those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed, like sign, no opposed. So is believed to be an adrenal crisis.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Any other questions or concerns? I think that's a good addition there. Okay. Senator Al, do you mind, can I give you some homework? Do you mind maybe getting with one of those medical institutions and maybe that'd be maybe a good bill in the future? Because if to me, if Addison's or some of the others need that, then I think that they should get the steroids too, and that can be life-saving also. So it may need some research on that.
Yeah.
All right, last trivia question. Who had CAH? What famous person who's buried in Savannah had congenital adrenal hyperplasia? Pulaski. All right, so French soldier. Pulaski did. At least that's what his bones show. All right, so the posture is that no further questions. Posture is such that I'm looking for a motion from Senator Hatchett, do pass, and we got don't tell me. All right, we got a LC 338697 as substituted. Did I say that right? Substituted here in HHS, so it'd have to go back for an agree. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. So that passes unanimously. So, and did you have someone that was going to carry that for you?
Yes, sir. Because Senator Harper and I share the family that works with these organizations of Jerem's parents, I thought Senator Harper would carry it, and I've talked to him briefly about it because they're constituents of his also.
That certainly sounds reasonable. It did.
You prepared to help Chairman Harper?
I'll be happy.
A little bit out of his
yes,
wheelhouse, just
it
in
is a
case
little
he
bit
gets
out.
in trouble on the floor.
But Representative LaRicchia, you'll
Yes, sir.
be educating him up, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I think.
But I would
I
appreciate
think that's the
y'all
way he would say
stepping
it.
in if he gets in a little bit of trouble, but he
We'll be
should
happy
okay.
happy to assist, and Senator Al can too. And who seconded that motion? Do we have a?
I seconded it, I think.
Senator Burke seconded. Okay, so I think that's it. And any further business for the committee? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Amendment. Thank you, Chairman Huff-Settler. I'm sorry. So all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, like sign. Passed unanimously. Meeting's adjourned. We're meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We got, I think, 5 bills tomorrow. We're going to have a little bit more controversial bills next week.